My wolf has been sneaking out to meet yours for 3 months. The words landed in the royal hall so abruptly that for a heartbeat, nobody breathed. Emily Carter stood frozen beneath a ceiling of silver chandeliers, clutching a stack of library records against her chest as dozens of eyes turned toward her at once. She had come to Blackwood Palace expecting an ordinary delivery. Instead, she found herself staring directly into the cold silver gaze of Alpha King Ethan Blackwood. The most powerful wolf in the Northern Territories stood at the center of the room, dressed in a dark suit that somehow made him look even taller than his 6'4" frame. Advisors lined the walls. Elders occupied the front rows. Even visiting pack leaders had gone silent. Emily blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" A faint smile touched the corner of Ethan's mouth, though it looked more puzzled than amused. "You heard me." A nervous laugh escaped her before she could stop it. "Your Majesty, I think there's been some mistake." She was an Omega librarian from Moonridge. She spent most days organizing archives, helping children find books, and drinking far too much coffee. Nothing about her life involved secret meetings with the Alpha King. Yet something strange happened the moment their eyes met. A flicker, a sensation she couldn't explain. Not attraction exactly, more like recognition. Like seeing someone from a dream she couldn't quite remember. Around the room, whispers began spreading. Ethan ignored every one of them. His attention remained fixed on Emily. "Then explain this." An elderly woman stepped forward carrying a shallow silver basin filled with shimmering water. Moonwater. Emily recognized it immediately from old folklore texts. The elder lowered the basin onto a marble table. Ripples spread across the surface. At first, Emily saw nothing. Then the water brightened. Shapes appeared. A moonlit forest. Tall pines swaying in a cool night breeze. Silver grass glowing beneath starlight. And 2 wolves. The first wolf was enormous. Black fur. Bright silver eyes. Powerful and unmistakably royal. Gasps echoed through the hall. Everyone recognized Shadow, the Alpha King's wolf. Emily's stomach tightened. Beside him stood another wolf. Smaller. White fur touched with hints of gold. Gentle eyes. Familiar eyes. Her breath caught. Luna. Her wolf. The room fell completely silent as the vision continued. Shadow nudged Luna playfully with his shoulder. Luna trotted ahead through the grass before looking back at him. Shadow followed immediately. They moved together with effortless comfort, as though they had known each other forever. Emily's face grew warm. "What is this?" she whispered. The elder looked equally bewildered. This memory was revealed during a moon link examination. Ethan folded his arms. And that wasn't the surprising part. The image shifted. The wolves were sitting beneath an ancient oak tree. Luna rested beside Shadow. Their tails brushed. Their expressions were content, comfortable, entirely at ease. The kind of ease that only came from spending a great deal of time together. According to the Moonwater, the elder said carefully, this was recorded nearly 3 months ago. A collective murmur rolled through the hall. Emily stared at the vision in disbelief. 3 months? That wasn't possible. She would remember something like that, wouldn't she? Yet as she looked at Luna's face, a strange feeling stirred deep inside her chest. Not memory exactly, more like an echo, a feeling of moonlight, laughter, running through endless forests she had never consciously seen. Ethan's expression softened slightly. For the first time since she entered the hall, he looked just as confused as she felt. "The problem," he said quietly, "is that Shadow never told me." Emily slowly looked up. "Luna never told me either." For a long moment, they simply stared at each other while an entire kingdom waited for answers neither of them had. 3 months earlier, Emily Carter had no reason to believe anything unusual was happening in her life. The small apartment above Moonridge Library creaked softly whenever the wind rolled down from the northern hills, and most nights followed the same comforting routine. She finished shelving books, locked the front doors, carried a paper cup of coffee upstairs, and fell asleep while reading novels she rarely finished. It was ordinary, peaceful, predictable, which was exactly why the dreams felt so strange. The first one arrived on a rainy Thursday night. Emily found herself standing in a forest unlike any place she had ever visited. Silver moonlight spilled across endless stretches of grass. Towering pine trees swayed gently in the distance. The air smelled crisp and clean, carrying hints of cedar and wildflowers. She was not afraid. Somehow, she felt as though she belonged there. Then she heard footsteps. Soft, steady, approaching through the grass. A massive black wolf emerged from the shadows. His coat shimmered beneath the moonlight like polished obsidian. His silver eyes locked onto hers immediately. Emily should have been frightened. Instead, an unexpected warmth spread through her chest. The wolf stopped several feet away and simply sat down, watching her, waiting. Neither of them moved. Neither of them looked away. Then, to her complete surprise, another wolf brushed past her shoulder. White fur touched with streaks of gold. Bright eyes full of confidence. Luna. Emily recognized her instantly. Every werewolf knew their own wolf. Luna trotted directly toward the black wolf without hesitation. The black wolf rose to meet her. They touched noses. Then they began walking side by side through the moonlit field, as if continuing a conversation that had started long before Emily arrived. When she woke the next morning, she laughed at herself. It was only a dream. A strange one, perhaps, but nothing more. Yet the dream returned the following night. And the night after that. Soon, it became a pattern. Every few days, Emily found herself back in the same forest. Sometimes Luna and the black wolf raced through open meadows. Sometimes they sat beside a stream that reflected the stars above. Sometimes they simply wandered together beneath the moon without making a sound. The strangest part was how familiar everything began to feel. Emily started waking up with emotions she could not explain. Happiness, anticipation, even disappointment whenever the dreams ended too quickly. One Saturday morning, she sat at her kitchen table staring into her coffee while her best friend Olivia watched her with concern. "You have that look again," Olivia said. Emily blinked. "What look?" "The one where you are physically here, but mentally somewhere else." Emily smiled awkwardly. "I have been having weird dreams." Olivia grinned immediately. "About a guy?" "About wolves." Olivia burst out laughing. Emily laughed too, though something about the answer felt less funny than it should have. Later that evening, as sunlight faded beyond the library windows, Emily caught herself staring at the full moon rising above Moonridge. A strange longing tugged at her heart. Not sadness, not loneliness, more like the feeling that someone was waiting for her somewhere she could not reach. She pressed a hand against the cool glass and shook her head. It was ridiculous. Dreams were dreams. Nothing more. What Emily did not know was that hundreds of miles away, inside Blackwood Palace, Alpha King Ethan Blackwood was standing on a balcony beneath the very same moon, asking himself why his wolf kept disappearing every time he fell asleep. Alpha King Ethan Blackwood was not accustomed to mysteries. For most of his life, every challenge had an answer, every problem a solution, and every threat a clear path forward. Yet for the past 3 months, one question had followed him everywhere. Where was Shadow going? The question sounded ridiculous even inside his own head. A wolf was not a separate creature that wandered off on its own. Human and wolf shared the same soul, the same mind, the same instincts. At least, they were supposed to. But every night, the moment Ethan drifted into sleep, something strange happened. He would wake hours later with the lingering sensation of movement. Not physical movement. Memory. Emotion. Like returning home after a trip he could not remember taking. At first, he ignored it. Alpha Kings had enough responsibilities without worrying about dreams. But then the signs became impossible to dismiss. One morning, he woke smiling for no reason. Another day, he found himself humming a tune he had never heard before. Twice he caught himself looking forward to bedtime. That alone was alarming. Ethan rarely slept more than 5 hours a night. Yet suddenly he found himself eager to close his eyes, eager to return somewhere. The realization bothered him more than he cared to admit. One evening, he stood inside the palace library surrounded by centuries of werewolf records. Towering shelves stretched nearly 20 feet high. Ancient journals covered moon bonds, pack histories, and spiritual connections. None of them mentioned wolves secretly developing lives of their own. Across from him sat Elder Miriam, one of the oldest scholars in the kingdom. She adjusted her glasses and studied him carefully. "You look exhausted." Ethan folded his arms. "I am investigating something." "That usually means you have not slept." "I have slept." "Then why do you look annoyed?" Ethan hesitated. "Because every time I sleep, Shadow disappears." Elder Miriam lowered her book slowly. "Disappears? I cannot explain it." The elderly woman stared at him for several seconds before speaking again. "And how long has this been happening?" Ethan glanced toward the window. Moonlight spilled across the floor. 3 months. To his surprise, she did not laugh. Instead, her expression became thoughtful. Interesting. Ethan frowned. Interesting. Very. That answer helped absolutely nothing. Over the following weeks, the mystery only deepened. Advisors noticed changes in Shadow during ceremonial shifts. The normally reserved wolf appeared distracted. More than once, Shadow ignored official greetings from visiting alphas. Once, during a council gathering, he spent several minutes staring toward the southern horizon as though listening for something far away. Something only he could hear. Ethan was beginning to lose patience. Then came the morning that changed everything. He woke before sunrise with an unfamiliar memory lingering in his mind. Grass brushing against his paws. Cool air carrying the scent of wildflowers. And laughter. Not human laughter. Wolf laughter. Joyful. Warm. Shared. Ethan sat upright immediately. His heart pounded. This was different. Stronger. For the first time, the memory did not vanish. It remained vivid and clear. He could almost see another wolf standing beside Shadow. White fur touched with gold. Bright eyes. Familiar. Somehow. Important. Before he could grasp the memory completely, it slipped away, leaving only certainty behind. Shadow was not wandering alone. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, someone else was involved. Someone Ethan had never met. Someone his wolf clearly knew very well. By noon, he had made his decision. A royal convoy would depart for Moonridge. Because whether this mystery began with dreams, fate, or something far stranger, Ethan intended to uncover the truth himself. Moonridge had never seen a royal convoy before. People crowded the sidewalks long before sunrise, whispering excitedly as black vehicles rolled through the town square and stopped outside the historic council building. Store owners abandoned their morning routines. Children pressed against windows. Even the town mayor looked nervous. Emily Carter, meanwhile, was trying very hard not to spill coffee on herself. She hurried down Maple Street carrying a cardboard tray with 4 cups balanced carefully in her hands. Olivia walked beside her, practically vibrating with excitement. "Do you understand what is happening right now?" she asked. Emily sighed. "The Alpha King is visiting." "The Alpha King never visits small towns." "Apparently he does now." Olivia shook her head. "You are impossible." Emily smiled despite herself. The truth was that she found the entire situation strange. Moonridge was quiet, peaceful. There was no reason for the ruler of the Northern Territories to spend time there. Yet the royal convoy had arrived before dawn and palace officials were already meeting with local leaders. Nobody seemed to know why. As they approached the library, a cool breeze drifted through the street. Emily paused unexpectedly. Something felt different. Familiar somehow. Like a distant memory trying to surface. Before she could identify the feeling, a voice called her name from inside the library. The morning rush began immediately. Books needed organizing. Returns needed processing. Visitors had questions. For several hours, Emily forgot all about royal convoys and mysterious dreams. Then the accident happened. It was nearly noon when she rounded a corner carrying a stack of archived records. At the exact same moment, someone stepped through the library entrance. Emily turned too quickly. The records slipped. Papers scattered everywhere. Oh no. She dropped to her knees instantly. Another person knelt at the same time. Their hands reached for the same folder. Their fingers touched. The world seemed to stop. Emily froze. A strange sensation rushed through her chest. Warm. Familiar. Impossible to describe. She looked up. Silver eyes met hers. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Ethan Blackwood stared at her with exactly the same confusion she felt. The library noise faded into the background. The sunlight streaming through the windows seemed brighter somehow. Emily could not explain why her heart suddenly felt lighter. Ethan slowly withdrew his hand. "I apologize," he said. His voice was calm and deep. "That was my fault." Emily blinked. No, it was definitely mine. To her horror, she realized she was kneeling on the floor arguing politely with the Alpha King. Around them, several librarians stood frozen in disbelief. Olivia looked seconds away from fainting. Ethan glanced down at the scattered papers before helping gather them. The gesture surprised everyone, including Emily. She accepted the folders he handed back to her. "Thank you. You are welcome." For reasons she could not explain, neither seemed eager to leave. An awkward silence settled between them. Ethan studied her face briefly, as though searching for something. Emily experienced the exact same impulse. There was no spark of a mate bond, no overwhelming pull, nothing dramatic. Yet an undeniable familiarity lingered beneath the surface. Finally, one of Ethan's advisors approached. "Your Majesty, the meeting begins in 10 minutes. Ethan nodded, but kept his eyes on Emily for another moment. "Have we met before?" Emily almost laughed. "I think I would remember that." A faint smile appeared on his face. "That is probably true." Then he walked away. Emily stood motionless long after he disappeared through the library doors. Across town, Ethan found himself looking back toward the building more than once. Neither of them noticed the same thing happening at that exact moment. Deep within, their shared souls, Luna and Shadow, were both extremely pleased with themselves. The next few days should have returned to normal. Instead, everything became stranger. Emily told herself she had simply met an important visitor and nothing more. Yet every morning she caught herself wondering whether Ethan Blackwood was still in Moonridge. Every afternoon, she found herself glancing toward the library entrance whenever the bell above the door chimed. And every evening she dreamed. The dreams were no longer distant glimpses of moonlit forests. They felt real. One night, she watched Luna race through silver grass while Shadow followed close behind. Another night, they wandered beside a crystal-clear stream beneath a sky crowded with stars. Sometimes they sat together beneath the ancient oak tree Emily had seen before. Sometimes they simply enjoyed the silence. The strange part was not what the wolves were doing. The strange part was how happy they seemed. Emily woke one morning smiling without knowing why. Across the kingdom, Ethan was experiencing exactly the same problem. During a council meeting, one of his advisors paused in the middle of a report. "Your Majesty?" Ethan blinked. "What?" "You have been staring out the window for 5 minutes." Ethan looked away from the distant mountains. "Continue." The advisor exchanged confused glances with the others. Nobody mentioned that the Alpha King almost never lost focus. That evening, Ethan attempted to review trade agreements. Instead, he found himself sketching absent-mindedly in the margin of a document. A tree. An oak tree. He stared at the drawing for several seconds before closing the folder in frustration. Something was influencing both of them, though neither understood how. The answer arrived from an entirely unexpected source. On Friday afternoon, Emily visited a small bookstore across town. The owner, an elderly woman named Mrs. Holloway, had known her since childhood. As Emily browsed a shelf of folklore books, a thick volume suddenly slipped loose and landed at her feet. "Interesting choice," Mrs. Holloway said. Emily picked it up. The title read Ancient Bonds of the Moon Wolves. "I was not choosing it," Emily replied. "It practically attacked me." Mrs. Holloway laughed. "Sometimes books find readers." Emily opened it curiously. A page near the center contained an illustration of 2 wolves standing beneath moonlight. Her breath caught. The image looked remarkably similar to Shadow and Luna. Before she could read further, her phone vibrated. "Olivia, turn on the television," her friend said immediately. "Right now." Emily hurried to the counter where a small television hung above the register. A news reporter stood outside Moonridge Town Hall. Ethan Blackwood had extended his stay indefinitely. "Sources say the Alpha King is conducting a personal investigation," the reporter explained. Emily felt that strange flutter in her chest again. At the exact same moment, inside Blackwood Palace's temporary Moonridge residence, Ethan received news of his own. Elder Miriam had finally uncovered something buried deep within the oldest royal records. Rare cases existed where wolves formed powerful emotional bonds before their human counterparts became aware of each other. Extremely rare. Almost unheard of. Ethan read the passage twice. Then a third time. Before he could process the implications, a familiar warmth appeared in the back of his mind. Shadow. The wolf seemed unusually pleased. Ethan narrowed his eyes. "What are you hiding?" The answer came not in words, but in emotion. Amusement. Satisfaction. And somewhere far away, Luna was feeling exactly the same thing. The following Monday, everything came to a head. Emily received an invitation she was certain had been delivered to the wrong person. The seal alone was enough to make her stare for nearly 30 seconds. Blackwood Palace. Royal authority. Personal request. She read the letter 3 times before finally accepting that her name was indeed written across the front. By sunset, she found herself standing inside Moonridge Council Hall alongside pack leaders, elders, scholars, and several members of the royal court. The atmosphere felt unusually tense. Conversations remained hushed. Curious glances followed her everywhere she went. Nobody seemed willing to explain why she had been summoned. Then Ethan entered the room. The hall immediately fell silent. Emily noticed something different about him. He looked calm, but beneath that calm rested unmistakable determination. Whatever answers he had been searching for, he believed he was close to finding them. Elder Miriam stepped forward carrying the same silver basin Emily had seen days earlier. Moonwater shimmered beneath the hall lights. "Thank you all for gathering," the elder announced. "Recent discoveries have revealed an exceptionally rare phenomenon." Murmurs spread through the audience. The elder raised a hand. Silence returned. Historical records describe occasions when wolves formed emotional bonds independent of conscious human awareness. Emily felt her stomach tighten. Ethan glanced toward her. "We have confirmed such a case may exist now." The moon water began to glow. Everyone leaned forward. Images slowly appeared across the silver surface. At first, the visions looked familiar. Moonlit forests, endless fields, the ancient oak tree. Then the memories became clearer than ever before. Gasps echoed throughout the hall. Shadow and Luna were not merely meeting. They were spending enormous amounts of time together. The visions revealed dozens of shared moments. Running through meadows, exploring hidden trails, resting beneath starlit skies, chasing fireflies through summer grass. Emily covered her mouth. Oh my goodness. More memories surfaced. Weeks of memories. Then months. The room grew increasingly stunned. One elder actually removed his glasses and cleaned them twice before looking again. "This cannot be correct," someone whispered. Unfortunately, it was correct. Every memory carried identical spiritual signatures. Dates, locations, emotional resonance. The evidence was undeniable. Shadow and Luna had been meeting regularly for nearly 3 months. A younger scholar suddenly pointed toward the basin. "Wait." The image shifted again. Luna sat beneath the oak tree while Shadow carried a bundle of wildflowers in his mouth. The hall exploded with laughter. Emily felt her face turn bright red. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Even he appeared embarrassed. The next memory somehow made everything worse. Shadow proudly presented the flowers. Luna stared at them for several seconds before walking away completely unimpressed. More laughter filled the room. "She rejected the flowers," one elder gasped between laughs. "Apparently," another replied. Ethan rubbed his forehead. Emily wished the floor would open beneath her. Yet despite the embarrassment, something unexpected happened. The more memories they witnessed, the warmer the room became. The wolves were not behaving mysteriously or dangerously. They were simply happy, comfortable, genuine. Every interaction felt natural, honest, real. Finally, the visions faded. Silence settled once more. Elder Miriam looked around the hall carefully before delivering the conclusion everyone already suspected. There is no uncertainty remaining. Shadow and Luna formed a bond 3 months ago. Emily slowly turned toward Ethan. Ethan looked back at her. For a long moment, neither knew what to say. Because for the first time, both of them fully understood the truth. While they had been living separate lives, their wolves had already written the first chapter of a story neither human had known existed. The meeting should have ended after the truth was revealed. Instead, it became the most talked about event in Moonridge history. By the following morning, rumors had spread through every corner of town. Shop owners discussed it over coffee. Teachers whispered about it between classes. Even children had somehow learned that the Alpha King's wolf had been secretly spending time with a librarian's wolf. Emily wished she could disappear. Unfortunately, that became impossible the moment reporters arrived. She stepped out of the library one afternoon and immediately spotted 3 news vans parked across the street. "You have got to be kidding me," she muttered. Olivia appeared beside her carrying 2 iced coffees. On the bright side, nobody is talking about taxes anymore. Emily stared at her. "That is your bright side. I am doing my best." Meanwhile, Ethan was facing a different problem. The royal court was divided. Some advisors considered the entire situation amusing. Others considered it deeply significant. Several senior alphas insisted the phenomenon needed further investigation. During one council session, Lord Harrington cleared his throat and spoke carefully. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should avoid drawing conclusions too quickly." Ethan leaned back in his chair. "What conclusions?" "Regarding Miss Carter." Ethan raised an eyebrow. I have not drawn any conclusions. Precisely, Harrington said. Which would be easier if your wolf stopped looking pleased every time her name is mentioned. Laughter erupted around the table. Ethan was not amused. Unfortunately, Shadow was. The wolf's satisfaction had become impossible to ignore. That evening, Ethan walked alone through Moonridge Park, hoping fresh air would clear his thoughts. Instead, he found Emily sitting on a bench overlooking a small lake. She noticed him at the same moment. For a second, both considered pretending they had not seen each other. Neither succeeded. "Hello," Emily said. "Hello." An awkward silence followed. Then, unexpectedly, they both laughed. The tension eased immediately. Ethan sat beside her. The lake reflected the colors of sunset across the water. Families strolled nearby. Children played beneath old maple trees. It felt surprisingly normal. "I never expected any of this," Emily admitted. "Neither did I. Do you know what the worst part is?" Ethan glanced toward her. "What?" "Everyone keeps looking at me like I suddenly became a different person." Ethan considered that for a moment. "Did you?" "No, then neither did they." Emily smiled softly. It was a simple answer, but somehow comforting. For the next hour they talked about ordinary things. Books, favorite places, childhood memories. Neither mentioned mate bonds or royal politics. And for the first time, they began learning about each other instead of learning about their wolves. Somewhere deep within their shared souls, Luna and Shadow seemed unusually quiet. Not because they had lost interest. Quite the opposite. They had spent months pushing fate forward. Now, for the first time, they appeared content to step back and watch. Because the conversation unfolding beside that lake belonged entirely to Ethan and Emily. And both wolves seemed to understand something important. Their story may have started beneath moonlit skies months ago, but this chapter was finally being written by the humans themselves. A week later, Elder Miriam invited Emily and Ethan to a private gathering at the Moonridge Observatory. The stone building sat atop a hill overlooking miles of forest and rolling fields. As the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, golden light painted the landscape below. Emily stood beside one of the large windows, watching the first stars appear. "You look nervous," Ethan observed. "I was told there would be answers tonight," Emily replied. "That usually means trouble." A faint smile crossed his face. "Fair point." Elder Miriam arrived carrying several ancient journals bound in worn leather. Unlike the crowded meetings before, only a handful of trusted scholars attended. The atmosphere felt calm, almost intimate. After everyone settled into their seats, the elder opened the oldest journal carefully. "For generations," she began, "wolves and humans have believed they discovered destiny together." She looked toward Emily and Ethan. "That is not always true." The room grew quiet. Elder Miriam turned several fragile pages before stopping at a detailed illustration. It showed two wolves standing beneath a full moon, while their human counterparts remained separated by great distance. "In extremely rare bonds," she explained, "the wolves recognize each other first." Emily leaned forward. Ethan folded his arms thoughtfully. "How rare?" he asked. "Rare enough that most historians believe these accounts were myths." The elder pointed toward a passage written nearly 300 years earlier. "The wolves established trust, friendship, loyalty, sometimes long before their humans ever meet." Emily blinked. "So Luna and Shadow knew?" "Oh, they knew," Elder Miriam replied. Several scholars struggled not to laugh. The elder continued reading. Story after story described similar patterns. Wolves meeting through dreams. Shared emotions appearing unexpectedly. Strange feelings of familiarity long before any logical explanation existed. As Emily listened, pieces of her own experience finally began falling into place. The dreams. The unexplained happiness. The sense of missing someone she had never met. Across from her, Ethan appeared equally absorbed. For the first time, neither felt confused by what had happened. Instead, it all seemed surprisingly simple. Somewhere along the way, Luna and Shadow had found each other. The humans had merely arrived late to the conversation. After the meeting ended, Emily and Ethan stepped outside together. The night air felt cool and fresh. Above them, thousands of stars filled the sky. "Can you believe this?" Emily asked. Ethan looked upward. Honestly, not even a little." She laughed. He laughed too. The sound echoed softly across the hilltop. Then Emily grew thoughtful. "Do you ever wonder what they talked about?" Ethan stared at her. Talked about the wolves. His expression immediately became suspicious. I'm not sure I want to know. What if they spent 3 months discussing us? That possibility concerns me greatly. Emily laughed harder than she had in days. Ethan shook his head, though amusement sparkled in his silver eyes. Deep inside, Luna and Shadow radiated unmistakable satisfaction. Not pride, not triumph. Something gentler. They had not forced anything. They had simply recognized a connection worth protecting. And now, standing beneath the stars, Ethan and Emily finally understood the lesson their wolves had known from the very beginning. Some bonds begin with destiny. But the most important part comes afterward, when two people choose to discover each other for themselves. Autumn arrived quietly in Moonridge. Golden leaves drifted through the streets. The mornings carried a cool crispness, and the hills beyond town glowed beneath soft sunlight. For the first time in months, life felt peaceful. The rumors eventually faded. Reporters moved on to other stories. The excitement surrounding the unusual wolf bond slowly settled into local legend. Yet one thing never returned to normal. Ethan kept finding reasons to visit Moonridge. Official inspections, community projects, library donations. At one point, Olivia created an entire list called Excuses the Alpha King Invents to visit Emily Carter. Ethan was never allowed to see it. Emily, however, laughed every time a new item was added. One Saturday afternoon, the town hosted its annual harvest festival. Families filled the square. Music drifted through the air. Children raced between booths carrying caramel apples and bags of kettle corn. Emily helped organize a community book drive near the center of town. She was arranging a stack of donated novels when a familiar voice spoke behind her. I believe I was promised coffee. Emily turned and smiled. You traveled 200 miles for coffee? Possibly. That seems inefficient. I am told I make questionable decisions. She laughed and handed him a paper cup. Around them, nobody seemed surprised anymore. The Alpha King and the librarian had become a familiar sight. What remained unusual was how natural it felt. Later that evening, as the festival lights flickered beneath the darkening sky, Ethan and Emily walked toward the hill overlooking Moonridge. The same hill where she often watched the sunset after long days at the library. The town stretched below them like a painting. Warm lights glowed from homes and storefronts. Music drifted faintly through the evening air. For a while neither spoke. They simply enjoyed the moment. Then Ethan reached into his coat pocket and removed a folded piece of paper. Emily frowned. What is that? Evidence. That sounds concerning. It should. He handed it to her. Emily unfolded the paper and immediately burst into laughter. It was a drawing. A remarkably detailed drawing of an oak tree. Beneath it stood 2 wolves. One black, one white with streaks of gold. You kept this? She asked. Apparently I drew it before I knew why. Emily shook her head, still smiling. They really were ahead of us, were not they? Ethan looked toward the horizon. By several months. The thought should have felt strange. Instead, it felt comforting. Fate had opened a door neither of them knew existed. But everything that followed had been their own choice. The conversations, the friendship, the trust, the countless moments spent learning who the other person truly was. Ethan turned toward her. Moonlight caught the silver of his eyes. Shadow already made his decision a long time ago. Emily smiled softly. Luna too. He nodded. Then he extended his hand. Not as a king. Not because of destiny. Not because of ancient traditions or mysterious wolf bonds. Simply as himself. The difference is that they never asked us. Emily looked at his hand. Then she looked at him. The man she had once known only through stories. The man who had become one of the most important parts of her life. A warm feeling settled in her heart. Certain. Steady. Real. She placed her hand in his. Then I guess it is a good thing we finally caught up. Below them, the lights of Moonridge shimmered beneath the stars. Somewhere deep within their souls, Luna and Shadow seemed extraordinarily pleased. But this time, neither wolf took credit. Because at last, the choice belonged entirely to Ethan and Emily. And together, they stepped forward into the future that destiny had suggested, but they had chosen for themselves.